Hey guys, we're on unit 3, and this is day 5, and we're going to talk about domain and range. And earlier in this unit, we talked about how domain is the input values, and they are, remember, the x values on the graph. And remember, x values go left and right, just like the x-axis does. Okay? The range is the output values, and they are the y values on the graph. And remember that the y-axis goes up and down on a graph, okay? And also remember that as you go to the left, you are heading towards negative infinity on the x-axis. And as you go to the right, you're heading towards positive infinity on the x-axis. And with the y-axis, when you go down and keep going down, we're heading towards negative infinity. And at the top of the y-axis is positive infinity. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to write domain and range of a function. Always write the minimum or the lowest number to the maximum or the highest number when you're doing domain and range. Okay, we're going to talk about interval notation. It says to identify the endpoints used and then write with appropriate either parentheses or brackets. Okay, the difference between them is that these include values, where these come close but don't include or not include. You never want to include infinity or any open circles. Okay. You must always identify what set is the domain and the range, because if you just write two intervals, the person grading your paper or reading your paper does not know which one is which. Okay. Here's what I just talked about, is that the parentheses don't include or not include. You use them with open circles on a graph. You also use them with infinity, okay, positive and negative infinity. The brackets, which we said include the numbers, you use them when you actually reached that point, or they're closed circles on a graph. And no endpoints, positive and negative infinity. You always use those as parentheses, like I said up above. Okay, set notation is our other type of notation. This one was interval that we just talked about. This one is set notation. And you identify the endpoints and you use inequality signs, okay, to show start and end. And again, these inequality signs are the same thing as including because they have the equal to sign underneath them. Okay, and these ones here would be with the round parentheses. They don't include, like infinity and open circles. Okay. All right, if we go down, how to determine and read domain and range of a function graphically. Okay. How to determine domain. You are going to go ahead and read domain, remember, is the x values, and you always want the smallest first, so you have to start on the left-hand side, which is normal to us because we read from left to right. Okay. You're going to mark the left point unless there's an arrow, okay? Then circle it, and then you're going to read to the right point. And if it's not a point, it's an arrow, you circle it because that's going to indicate infinity. Okay. With a highlighted, and you can use a vertical line. You don't have to do this. It's just a way that sometimes it makes it easier to tell domain and range. And you're going to extend it through the x-axis to identify your x values on the left and the right-hand side. Okay. Write your domain using interval notation or set notation. So if we look here on the graph, okay, we would have a vertical line that goes here because there are no points anywhere to the left of that line. So that is the line that can be drawn to the most left of the points on the graph. And this here is the line on the right-hand side. There are no points to the right-hand side. All the graph is between those two x values. And those two x values are -2 and 1, 2, 3 and +3. Okay, and so we go ahead and say that in interval notation, that would be a -2, comma 3. It's all points between -2 and 3. However, you'll notice that there's an open circle at -2, so we don't want to include that. We never actually reached -2, just came really close. And on the right-hand side, 3 has a closed dot, which means we actually reached it, so we want to include that. Okay, and that's what it would look like with interval notation. Okay, set notation, a little different. You still use -2 and you still use 3. I just put a little bit more space in between them. And because these are the x's, I use an x in the between. And then they're less than signs. However, you got to watch out. They might be less than or equal to. So with the open circle, we cannot be equal to it. So we just say it's less than. And we have the 3, and so that would also get a less than. However, it's a close, so we want to put an equal to. And so what this means is that for all values of x, x is either greater than -2, and it is less than or equal to 3. So notice how we read that. X is greater than, because we're reading towards the right, so that would be called a greater than sign, even though it's a less than sign. But when you read it, you say x is greater than -2, and x is less than or equal to 3. So x is between all those numbers, equal to 3 and greater than -2. All right, so how to determine your range. So with your range, we want to read from the smallest number, which is going to be found on the bottom, to the top. And that is a little bit different from how we normally read, so be very careful. Because when we read a book, we read from left to right, top to bottom. Reading from bottom to top is unnatural to us, and we kind of struggle with it sometimes. So if we go ahead and we mark the lowest point, no part of the graph is lower than that. Be careful with arrows, okay? And the highest point. No values are above that red line, okay? We mark them with a horizontal line. And we extend it through the y-axis to identify our values, okay? And so we're going to go ahead and figure out what those lowest value is. And if I go to my graph, we got -1, -2, -3, -4, okay? And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is +5. So for interval notation, it would be the -4, comma the 5. And -4 is an open circle, so we're going to use a round bracket because we didn't actually reach -4. And with the 5, we're going to go ahead and include it because we actually did reach 5. Okay. With set notation, we're going to use the same exact numbers. However, I'm going to leave a little space. And because these are y values, we have to change the variable in the middle. They're still less than symbols. However, this one is going to be just a less than sign because of the open circle, and this one will be a less than or equal to sign because we actually did reach a maximum of 5. Okay, and that is how we're going to go ahead and write our domain and range. We do prefer interval notation over set. However, we do need to be able to read and write both, especially if they are choices in a multiple choice question and you only know how to read one of the notations. It's going to be difficult to answer that multiple choice question. All right, so we have to be able to read and write both notations, although we do use set notation, or we prefer set notation because it is a little bit easier to write. Okay? All right, I will see you guys on the backside of notes.